So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our State Spotlight series, Growing Your Own, episode 2. I'm Josh Starr. I'm the CEO of PDK. I've been in PDK for about 5.5 years now. Former superintendent of schools, former teacher in Brooklyn, New York. Worked with students with special needs, and I'm really thrilled to be with you all today to talk about one of our signature programs at PDK, which is Educators Rising, which is really helping to not only address the teacher shortage, but diversify the profession. And we're doing these webinars to highlight what the awesome people in states are doing. And you're gonna hear today about what's happening in Arkansas, and specifically how they've been raising money. But what we really wanna do is just tell the story of how leaders in districts, leaders in states, leaders in higher ed are just, seizing the opportunity to take our stuff and make it their own within their local context. One of the great things about being at a national organization, of course, is that everybody's different. Every state's different, every jurisdiction is different, and what we want to do is help facilitate the process by which folks learn how to diversify the profession and address the teacher shortage. So again, if you missed the first spotlight in Connecticut and how they're the work they're doing, you can find the recorded presentation there. I will just tell you a very quick story that's not on script. We happen to be talking with the Connecticut team today while the commissioner, Dr. Miguel Cardona, was in another room talking to the students at the New Britain high school Educators Rising program. And of course, Dr. Cardona is the new Secretary of Education. So like the serendipity was amazing, and we were thrilled to see how folks are starting to champion Educators Rising in the country. And we're hoping to see it grow even more. And what you'll see today is Arkansas is at the forefront of that work. So that's me, and I'm gonna introduce you to Charlie Croson, who's the Recruitment and Retention Program Advisor in the Arkansas Department of Education, and really works closely with us to make sure that Arkansas is doing what it needs to do to really help districts with this work. And what I'm gonna do is kind of tee everything up, talk about, and then we're gonna talk to Charlie about like what's been going on in the state. So just big picture, right? We know that we have to hire more teachers. LPI has done a lot of good work at really examining this problem. They have great data on it. You can find your own data in there. TNTP, the New Teacher Project, they put something out also recently to show the teacher shortages state by state, but we just know that it's a problem, and it's being exacerbated these days. We also know that it's expensive to replace a teacher in a rural suburban area, and it's even more in an urban area. When I was superintendent in Montgomery County, Maryland, we calculated that we invested $39,000 in a teacher in their first 5 years. So turnover is a challenge, and part of the turnover challenge and the attrition challenge is to have a good recruitment challenge or a good recruitment strategy, and that's part of what we're trying to do. We also know that average across the country, there's been a drop in teacher preparation enrollments, right? I'm sure have seen this in your own jurisdictions, but we know that there's a problem there. So, and we know that there's a compelling need to get more students of color to be in classrooms where they see someone that looks like them in a position of authority. We published a couple great articles and actually did a webinar. It was about a year ago or so with Dan Goldhaber and with Travis Bristol. We have actually a special issue of Kaplan coming out in a few months about this issue of the power of teachers of color. And we know that the research says that it makes a difference. This research wasn't, frankly, as present, as evident 10 years ago as it is now, but we know that having teachers of color in schools makes a difference. Just an example from Dan's research. You can see right there. I'm not going to read it to you. I know you can all do that on your own. But there is, without a doubt, a benefit to having teachers of color within our schools. And we know the stats, right? Nationally, about 82% of teachers are white, 76% of teachers are women, 52% of kids there are kids of color. And we are glad that our demographics, we're very proud that our demographics match the demographics of the students in the country. We're really proud of that. And it's, again, because of the work that happens at the ground level. We help, we support, we facilitate, we can help you do that. But it's really about the leadership at the local level that does that. We also know that education is really a local entity, right? It's a local enterprise. About 60% of teachers teach within 20 miles from where they attended high school. And this is why we really believe that preparing the next generation of highly skilled professionals who look like the kids in their community is not just the responsibility of the school district. We need help from legislative bodies and state departments, right? You need to think about policies. You need to think about legislative incentives, whether it's like something like tuition reimbursement or something like that, right? We know that philanthropy, as we're going to talk about in a minute, makes a real difference, right? It can really accelerate and incentivize the work. And we know that institutes of higher ed, whether it's a public institution, whether it's a private institution, whether it's a community college, all four of those prongs need to come together to really support public education and and the development of the next generation of highly skilled professionals, right? There's no one way of going about that. What we're seeing throughout the country is it might be a teachers association, a union that says, you know what, we're going to start and we're going to pick up the ball and carry it. In another district, in another jurisdiction, it might be an institute of higher ed. In another one, it might be a school, in a school district. There's no one way of doing it. What we're trying to do is tell the story of how Arkansas is doing it, but there's no one approach. It has to be something that works for you, and that's what we try to do. And the fact is, if it's important enough, as you're going to see in Arkansas, you can make it happen. And what we're here to do is show you how others are doing it, and then help you do that. So let's start with talking about the Arkansas approach, and I'm going to invite Charlie to start talking. And I have a bunch of questions. She's going to start talking, and I'm going to kind of flesh some of it out, and then again put questions in the chat so that we can drill down a little bit on some of these issues if they're not clear, or you just want more follow-up information. So, talk to us, Charlie, about like how you started doing this work, how you're using Grow Your Own, what some of the issues are in Arkansas, and just how you're approaching this work.
Sure. I wanted to address the data that you shared earlier. It definitely speaks to Arkansas. About 90% of our districts utilize some form of teacher waiver for licensed positions. So we need teachers, like you're saying, and we need diversity. Our teacher pipeline is made up of 88% white teachers. So, and then we have 40% of our students are students of color. So that definitely reflects the picture in Arkansas. As far as Grow Your Own is concerned, we feel like it is the best way to meet the needs of our hardest to staff regions of the state. Every region of our state can benefit from Grow Your Own, but we know that these are the students that, like you said, that teach 60 miles.
Did Shirley just go out? I lost Charlie. Did anybody else? Uh-oh.
She's gone.
She's gone. All right. Love it. Okay, let me stop for a sec. Let's see what's going on. This is what I'm going to do as we try to get her back. I'm going to go into the chat, and I am going to see what questions have already arisen that we may be able to address as someone helps get Charlie back. All right, so gotta love it, right? Zoom is just, it used to be that the PowerPoint slide deck wouldn't work and you would mess around with that, and now it's Zoom kind of dies.
I'm back. I
you're
apologize.
back. Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry, something happened and I got logged off. So with Grow Your Own programs, we're trying to focus on our hardest to staff regions of the state, because we know that these students in these areas are more likely to come back and teach in these communities. Where Grow Your Own works everywhere, we know that it's more like we've tried these incentive programs where we ask people outside of the community to come and teach, and we incentivize them to come in from a community they might not be from. But we see oftentimes this works, and sometimes it doesn't work. These people take advantage of the incentive and then return to where their home district is or their home state. And so we see, if we can target those students in these classrooms, in these hardest to staff regions of the state, these students want to live in these communities. They're proud of these communities, and they want to give back to these communities. So what we've done is we've established the Certified Teaching Assistant pathway. This provides opportunities starting in high school for students to complete pedagogical coursework related to the field of teaching. And then they receive a credential that qualifies them to be a paraprofessional. We call it a Certified Teaching Assistant credential. And then our vision is that they are employed in their home district upon graduation, and then they work or they're supported by their district and an ed prep program as they complete that program of study. And then they are fully licensed teachers. They come home, they've gotten years of experience in the district, that valuable teaching experience, and they're more likely to stay in your district because that's, they are proud to live in that community. And they are that, like you said, the data you shared, 60% of teachers teach 20 miles from where they graduated high school. So that's really where, we've focused in. Like I said, Grow Your Own is great in every area of the state, but just when we started looking at our data, we realized that this is one of truly the only solutions to Grow Your Own problem or to teacher shortage problems in some areas.
So we're gonna get into that in a second. I want to take a step back though for a sec, Charlie. So the Certified Teaching Assistant pathway that you described, I mean, you already had some infrastructure in Arkansas that you're now bringing Educators Rising into to kind of accelerate, which we're going to talk about. But can you talk a little bit about the kind of history of that? Like, how did that initially start? How long had it been around? Because you're not starting with a blank slate, right? So what's just a little bit of background, behind the infrastructure that you inherited and are building on top of?
Sure. So the vision, we really wanted something that appealed to a student who might not be interested in the traditional college experience. And it just so happens that a lot of those students are in our hardest to staff regions of the state. And so we thought we need to develop a pathway that shows these students how they can start that coursework in high school, and they can through concurrent credit options, and so affordable, flexible way to start that pathway. And then they roll into, and so that was really, then they want that employment within their district. They might not want to travel far away from home to do a traditional college experience for whatever reason. They might, for financial reasons, they might need a job right out of high school, and they just might not want to relocate at this time. They might feel comfortable going to a 2-year university, a college, and completing their gen ed degree while they are working at their district. And so that's really what we developed the CTA for. It's been a vision for a while, and now we have a way to award that credential. It's through Career Tech in Arkansas, and so we really just are trying to find partners that can really grow this and show how it can work, especially in our hardest to staff regions of the state.
That's great. And the reason I bring that up is because, one of the things that I love, and again, I always think about my former superintendent experience, like when a state department is flexible and thinking, what are the needs in communities rather than the needs, up high, I think we can find more innovation and frankly, more success. But it wasn't enough, right? So you had a successful program before, you were doing the work. What was missing, and then why did you come to Educators Rising for this?
Sure. So we've had education and training pathways in the state since the early 2000s. In the last 10 years, they've really picked up, and our data looks great. We have completers. We have several students enrolled. It looks successful, but when we really started digging into the data, we noticed that our highest needs districts, our districts that employ 20% of their staff on licensure waivers, were not taking advantage of these programs. Out of those, only 2 of the top 10 districts utilizing licensure waivers even had the coursework in place. And in the last few years of data, they haven't had program completers. So we just were looking for a shift and just see why is this happening? Why are these districts not taking advantage of these opportunities? And so that really led us to explore Educators Rising, and because the data shows us, that some of these districts, the traditional curriculum just might not appeal to them as much as some of the cross-cutting themes that are found in the EdRising curriculum, and just the emphasis on diversity. So that's really where we just really wanted to be intentional about our focus. Instead of just opening up the opportunity to the entire state, we really wanted to hone in on our highest needs areas of the state, and then use EdRising to meet the needs of those districts.
Got it. So let's talk about how you started to find some partners, right? I mean, and you already sort of started touching on this, but what was it that you found with our program that you just felt you didn't have with your homegrown work?
Sure. So again, we just looked at the curriculum that we had utilized. We have standards in our state for our pre-educator program of study, and we've used some other programs to meet those standards in the past. But when we started looking at the research on what really brings diverse students and underrepresented populations such as males into the pipeline, the themes that are present in EdRising curriculum, like equity, anti-bias instruction, culturally responsiveness, really spoke to us, and the multiple levels of engagement. The student organization that offers networking opportunities, leadership, scholarships, competitions. And so just that multi-levels of engagement we need for our CT or for our program of study. EdRising meets the needs of the CTSO requirement. So that's also, it's just an overall great package for us to utilize in these districts.
I appreciate that. And I should also, just for everyone's edification, one of the things we found about a year ago when we had a small evaluation done, is that about half the kids who join Educators Rising, they've just always wanted to be teachers. They just always had this idea that they wanted to be teachers. And then about half the kids who are in Educators Rising, they're kind of like the way I got into education. They weren't planning on being teachers. They want to heal the world. They're activists. They're socially justice oriented. And then they realize that education is the way to do that, and by having a comprehensive program, by having inspiring master teachers to tap them on the shoulder, teacher leaders, you actually get those kids who really want to, change the world and are activists, but haven't thought of education. You get them to consider it. So that's part of why, frankly, we have some of those units to appeal to not only the teachers who are doing it, because I think a lot of people feel that way, but also to kids, and it seems to be an attractive element to them. So that's cool. Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about some of the funding, right? You already had some state funding, and you can talk a little bit about like how you were able to do that. But then, how do you get the Walton Family Foundation to expand the pilot, right? Because I know that outside funding helps accelerate, it brings people to the table. So talk a little bit about the funding history and how you were able to get to the point you're at now.
Sure. So I think it's really important that we had a statewide vision in place already that featured Grow Your Own programs. We had our certified teaching assistant credential. We had really done some research as to how the kind of curriculum that we were looking for. And so it wasn't that we just went to the Walton Family Foundation and said, we think EdRising would be great in our state. We were very intentional with our approach. We had our plan. We have our certified teaching assistant pathway. We could show how EdRising fit very well into that pathway. We understood Walton's vision, and so I think that's very important too, to understand your local funders' visions. They are very focused on improving the Delta region of our state and supporting that region, and so we came to them with a plan. This is how we feel like we could support that region. And so I think that was very important, just having that overall vision that included EdRising. It wasn't just EdRising was the vision. We had, a true vision, not just to offer some electives to students, not just to start a new student club, but a true, here is how we can end teacher shortages in Arkansas, and here's how EdRising plays a role in that. And so I think at the state level, we have a great way to look at that. We have the data, we can kind of envision an overall picture and understand how we can utilize funding to really be intentional with our support. And so I think that was truly really important. And the fact that we had committed some state funding, this is obviously something that's important to us as a state. And so I think that was important, that we also were committed to providing funding to this, and we weren't just looking to outside funding sources to fund it all.
So I want to just drill down on that a little bit, Charlie. So can you talk a little bit about the sources of funding? Was it just general operating? Did you use title dollars? Was it Perkins money? And was it being championed at the state superintendent level or the legislative level? I've done these budgets before. It doesn't just happen, right? Someone has to figure out the buckets of money. Someone has to figure out, you got to put it in the program. You got to sell it to somebody. Talk a little bit about those sources that were able to fund it.
Yeah, and so we had some funding budgeted at the state and the federal level. Perkins funding can also be utilized for this, but we're kind of in a transition period right now where we're working. We just consolidated our career tech and our ADE, or what we are, DESE, into one partnership. So we're really working through some of those details on when Perkins funding can and cannot be used, and partnering with career tech and really, calling this career tech program. But there were lots of funding sources that I could probably provide more clarification later, but as far as which ones were utilized specifically at the state level. But I know that we had set aside that funding in advance for several years. Our commissioner and our deputy commissioner are very supportive, and I know when it came time when COVID hit, I know that was the one thing that our commissioner said, was that we don't want to take any money away from recruitment efforts in Arkansas. So that has definitely been a focus area of our state.
That's great. Yeah, and you all heard that my mail was just delivered, hence my dog started barking like crazy. It happens like clockwork. Didn't expect it to happen right now, but I apologize for that. So the reason I also brought it up is that as folks know, of course, there's been a massive infusion of federal stimulus dollars for public education, and it is incredibly flexible. And while the state doesn't determine exactly how that money is going to be used, it can absolutely be used for innovative programs. And it can, EdRising is one of the programs they can be used for. And we can talk more about that later if anybody's interested in sending some information. But there will be opportunities through the stimulus money that's already come to states and is going out to districts just a couple weeks ago, and that we expect will be coming even more. So it's a great opportunity for folks. So, what do you think EdRising would appeal to audiences other than just middle and high school students looking at teaching as a career option? Do you think it can go beyond just middle and high schools? And I should say, while we designed this for high schools, we know that a lot of folks are looking at it at middle school, which is fabulous. So talk a little bit about the different audiences.
Sure. Yeah. So we really want to expand our program to utilize EdRising Collegiate. That's just something that we've seen, that once they graduate high school and go to college, it's often they have to wait till junior year to actually get involved in an ed prep program. And so this would be a great bridge between high school and actually the ed prep program, a good way to keep them engaged and involved in the profession. And also with our CTA pathway that I described earlier, oftentimes those students aren't experiencing a traditional college experience. So Collegiate would give them the opportunity to plug in and really network with students that are college students that are and so it would give them more of that traditional experience, or at least that network that they might be missing out on if they are going through a program 100% online or at night. So yeah, we're really looking to expand to the collegiate chapters as well. We do have some interest in our state, and so our IHEs are on board. So we're hoping to get that going. It's our next steps.
And that goes right into this question. I would also ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot because we didn't talk about this earlier, but are you having any conversations with community colleges at all? Because we've frankly been learning that it's one of the huge opportunities out there to really partner with more and more community colleges. They're starting 2-year programs to then matriculate into 4-year. Again, we had that kind of thing here in Montgomery County, but I'm curious as to whether you're seeing that at all as a possible path, and then the other kinds of partners that are needed to fulfill the mission you all have.
Yeah, so we definitely are in conversation with our 2-year colleges, like you said, and again, the vision that we have, some of these areas are hardest staff regions of the state. The closest 4-year institution is hours away, whereas there is a community college that offers that that first 2-year like associates of education right down the road. So that is something that we definitely are looking at, and we would love to partner. That's what we've got to develop, are these partnerships, so that these students can start their pathway as early as possible. That's just one of our big goals, is they can start taking that coursework concurrently when they're in high school, and it'll just give them that incentive to continue, that sense of accomplishment earlier. So definitely that. Of course, districts. We need them to understand how important this is. It's not just another elective to offer students. It's not just a student organization to get them involved in that. It is a true grow your own program that can help fill the vacancies in your district. It is a sustainable solution to teacher vacancies. So, yep. And we would love, like you mentioned earlier, districts to partner with a college or university and offer scholarship programs. Anything that would keep them, as they know once they graduate, they have that pathway there. They understand how to do it financially. So any of those partnerships, we would love to facilitate and highlight between districts and our colleges and universities.
And you kind of anticipated this next question about like the hope for moving from a pilot to an established program. And I would also say to everyone else out there, part of what we're trying to do at Educators Rising is capture all this information about how different folks are doing it so that we can help you think through your strategy. This is a movement for us, for all of us, right? We're all trying to do this. And one thing that educators don't do well enough is share. And we want to be the place that helps you think through what you're doing, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as they say, and you can see how others are doing it, even though it's never a one size fits all. Every context is different, but there's some practices and strategies out there that we can all learn from each other, and that's part of what we're trying to do. So as you go from a pilot to an established program, and this is the last slide, and then we're going to go into Q&A, and then I'm going to share a couple other things with folks. What's your hope for moving from a pilot to an established program? What does that look like?
Sure. So we're hoping to work with Walton, EdRising, our partner colleges and universities in our districts to really use this curriculum to create something that is Arkansas specific. We would love to have, right now we have standards as a state, but we don't have an Arkansas specific curriculum that we use to support these standards. So we'd like to take what EdRising has to offer and feedback from our pilot districts, and really make this something that fits our state. I would love, for our pilot districts to be exemplars for the state. Like I said, they are. We're building this really from the ground up in a lot of these districts, and it's hard work because some of them have never offered these courses before. But it would just, to me, the perfect vision would be for us to show, here's our exemplar programs, and here are students graduating from these high schools with a passion for teaching, with preparedness to begin this career, and then complete that pathway to licensure and come home and teach. So I think if we can start, just really work to support them, the teachers through professional development, get the students engaged in the student organizations in our pilots, then the good word will just start spreading itself. I think that EdRising being recognizable as our state student organization for pre-collegiate recruitment would be great too. You know, that it just has that recognition statewide as not just a student organization, but if you say you have an EdRising program in your school, that means that you have a grow your own program. It's the whole model is associated with the name EdRising. So really for us, that's our next steps, to really work hard to support our pilot districts, to make them exemplar programs, and really identify those gaps that are in the curriculum that we might be able to work with EdRising Walton and our state teacher leaders to really create that Arkansas specific curriculum to support our standards.
And I got to tell you, I am so excited about that, because we, look, EdRising is and PDK, we're nonprofit, right? We've been around for a long time, serving the public good. And the way that these things last into the future is through customization and flexibility. Like we know curriculum, we know how to do the assessments, we know how to do the micro credentials and all that. But every state, they have their own approach. And if you're going to be a teacher in that state, you need to actually have some experience, or there are requirements, of course, that for each state, and we want to help that, right? So the idea of sort of customizing is something that we're really thrilled to partner with. Okay, I am going to stop sharing and go into the chat so that we can start answering some questions. And then at the end, I'm going to go back to just share a couple more pieces of information. I will also say one of the things we will do, we take all these questions, we save them. If they haven't been answered, we will, and if there's something very specific, we'll get back to that person. We will also post the Q&A afterwards so that you can download it or you can share it. And if we didn't get to all of them. And also, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. You'll see our emails, my Twitter handles there. You can DM me, just we are always there to answer some of the questions. So something came up earlier about FEA. And this is the old FEA, right? We actually absorbed FEA back in the early 90s when we launched Educators Rising a few years ago. The idea was that it would be sort of the next level of FEA, which was, a bunch of great clubs and great activities going on, but this is the first standards-based national program with a curriculum, micro-credentials, training, competitions, conferences, and all that. So it's kind of the next level. So something came up, a question came up with just how many states. We're in all states. We have CTSO status, I think, in 31 states. We have about 2,000 chapters, growing all the time. Obviously, this year has been a little weird with COVID. It's hard to recruit. I mean, you all know, how difficult that's been. If you come to our conference, you see 1,200 young people who are itching to be the next, itching to become teachers. We're hoping we are expanding and growing our conference. So you just see the kind of volume that exists. And we also know that through webinars like this, we're really looking to expand the reach. Tim asked about it, said he sort of made a statement, but I think it's such an important one, that a key component to recruiting and retaining teachers of colors is ensuring a supportive school district culture. Yes, 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 yes. That's part of what we did with our webinar with Travis Bristol and Dan Goldhaber about a year and a half ago. It's part of why we're publishing through Kaplan, and you can just go on Kaplan online and look it up. A lot of information about this. We're hoping to do a webinar in March or April about this with some experts. It is not enough to just get kids of color in the door. You have to work really, really hard to keep them. It is essential. That means a lot of training for leaders in cultural competency. That means a lot of training for peers and for teachers. It is not enough to just say, oh, look, I got them in, I can go home. And I mean, I know you know a lot of this, but there's research out there. There's techniques, there's things you can do, but it's essential. And we would never claim victory at changing at simply changing the number of kids who are going in. We want to see a sustainment, right? Like we want to see it sustain and grow. And that's a lot of hard work on the part of leaders at the building level, at the system level, at the peer level. It is essential. And please go to Kaplan Online and look at some of the work stuff we have on there, because I think it's powerful. Saw something in there about Latinos in action. I would love to hear more about that. That's one of the areas that we have on our short list of like, how do we get a little more explicit about how we can attend to specific groups, right? Asian, Indigenous, Latino, Black, whatever it may be. We're always looking for those kinds of partnerships. So please ping us afterwards, reach out. We love those kinds of partnerships. Oh, I see someone is talking about doing their own for STEM. Again, I love that. One of the things we're looking at right now, and this is, again, on the list. I have not yet raised the money for this yet. So if anybody knows anyone who has the money for this, please let me know. We're looking at special education. We're looking at STEM. We're looking at ELL. We're looking at reading instruction and things like dyslexia as new enhancements to the curriculum that can help kids potentially identify specialties early on. I'll give you a quick story. One of the reasons why we love the clinical supervision part of this is it gives kids real experiences. So there was a student we had a couple years ago, I forget where she was, maybe in New Mexico, it doesn't matter. She was going to be a kindergarten teacher. She wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, right? She went into the clinical supervision. She realized she just couldn't stand kindergarten, but she loved upper elementary science. So now she's going to be an upper elementary science teacher, right? So that's why building those kinds of competencies and skills into the curriculum is something we want to do more of down the road. You know, I don't want to promise too much, but it's essential to us. And we also always want to hear from others about what's most important to you, so that we can build some of those in. Right now, we're thinking about special ed, ELL, STEM, and reading. Just sort of looking at more questions here, lots of chat back and forth that I see between our folks. Community colleges, essential. Can I keep up? All right. So other questions that have popped up as I've been talking very quickly. I'm sort of going back to my New York roots and just talking fast. Any other questions? If not, I am going to go back to the share. I want to share a little more information with everybody. And again, do not hesitate to reach out to us on anything that came up, and check the website for updates. So just to give you kind of just a quick overview, if you don't already know, right? Educators Rising is really about a community coming together where kids start in high school, even in middle school now. They get a real sense of what teaching is. They get real experience in not only the theory, but also in the practice through the clinical supervision. And then they go into a teacher prep program that's saying, yeah, we're ready for you, right? We want you. We're going to give you dual credit, we're tuition, whatever it may be. And districts, state departments, and philanthropists have come together, maybe using our GTP playbook, right? Maybe we can put the link into the chat with that. Come together and say, yeah, here's how we tackle this as a community, right? You can't have a strong community without strong schools. And that is not just one person's responsibility, it's everyone. So the idea is that through Educators Rising, these different entities come together to make all of that happen. We're a full-blown CTSO CTE program, which means we are eligible for Perkins dollars if we're a CTSO program in your state. And again, we're eligible for the new federal stimulus dollars. We have chapters. A lot of chapters do some amazing things, volunteering, you know, just amazing service programs. We have curriculum, units of study that are aligned to national board standards that really go in depth in particular areas. Clinical experience, again, clinical supervision, right? So you're in, once kids are in with other kids, that's when they get the buzz, right? And we've actually seen some schools are doing clinical supervision first or in concert with the classroom-based experience because they want kids to get that you know, the teaching buzz that you get when you're working with other kids. We have micro credentials so that you actually have a summative assessment and a badge, a digital badge. We have competitions, state and national competitions. We have our conference, and then we also have a network, right? We're trying to build and grow a network, share the stories, create a movement, and help people do this at the local level. Um, just a couple testimonials you see on the bottom. Dr. Reg Johnson, who's on this webinar, and you see Daisy Boyer, who is our student secretary. And you know, a lot of this comes from personal experiences that people have that drives them into teaching, and this call to service that we know a lot of folks have. We also have, as I mentioned before, last June, we got together a panel of experts from academia, from policy world, and practitioners to come together and help us create this blueprint. And it's we very much want it to be a guide that you can, it's not academic language, it's very, you know, straightforward, kind of practical approach to getting started on a lot of this work. That's, you know, it's a place to start. So you can just go on the website. I think it's in the upper left-hand corner. Someone may have put the link in already. You can see, you know, you can see it on there and take a look, and that can help you get started. And then of course, we're here to help you. These are just some of our awesome kids. And then, this is our next webinar. It's right after this for some of our members. So what I'm going to do is go back. I see there are a couple more things in the chat. So I want to make sure that we are attending to the chat, right? I see a reference to Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is doing some awesome work. They actually do a ceremony at the end of the year where they offer the top EdRising competition winners a contract for them to come back in 4 years. And then when they come back in 4 years, they do a big celebration. Like, so they've made EdRising this kind of major part of celebrating the idea that, you know, being a teacher is a wonderful thing for communities. Ann Matthews put in the chat the link to the Growing the Profession playbook. So get on there, you can take a look. See a couple others. Dual enrollment. We are really, really interested in hearing how folks are approaching dual enrollment, because we've been getting a lot of requests and questions about it. We're starting to pull together some various, you know, kind of research, some policy work to try to create some guidance on it. It's going to take us a little bit of time, but if there's anybody out there that has some great dual enrollment practices and stories, please send them our way, because we really want to help other folks understand how they're doing it, because we know that's a huge sell for Educators Rising. So please send it our way. So if there are no other questions, Charlie, what did I miss? What else about the Arkansas story is important for folks to understand? What about your experience should people know? And I would also say some of the struggles, like what has been not so easy, if there's anything else that you wanted to share.
Sure. So I guess I haven't really fleshed out a lot of what our grant from Walton provided the state. So that might be helpful when you're planning on an ask to a funding source, or just what you could utilize the funding for. So in order to build our program, we typically in the past, in our education and training program, hosted a statewide event. And this year, it just, you know, from the beginning of this year, we knew it was going to have to look different. So with our EdRising funding, what we've done is we are going to host regional events this year. And we are just using that funding because we feel like if we do it regionally, our partners, either in our co-ops, our colleges and universities in those areas, we have what we call educational renewal zones, which is supposed to be a bridge from the college to the district. So we are just basically providing funding to them and letting them plan EdRising events for students. And we're going to host the regional competitions there. And the good thing about doing regional is that we don't have to worry about having a limit on who we can send to nationals to compete this year. So we're planning, we've utilized set aside funding to send students to compete at the national level. And so that's just some of the things that we're doing. The professional development for our teachers is wonderful. We haven't rolled that out yet, but that's what we're going to utilize some of the funding for. And so EdRising has provided us a great partner to provide that for our teachers. And then, of course, the access to the curriculum is huge because, like I said, we have the standards, but we just we don't have a statewide curriculum yet. So I think that that's incredibly helpful to our districts. As far as issues, like I said, we're building these programs in these districts from the ground up. We could have provided this curriculum to our successful programs in the state, but just when we looked at our data, they don't need our help. Their programs are already doing very well. They have huge enrollment numbers, and they don't have the staffing issues that some of these districts do. So we've just really decided to be, intentional in our support, and we're going to work hard to build these programs. And like I said, I think it will be wonderful when we can point to these areas of the state as our exemplars, and that we can show that this is truly working, and we can point to this program as the turning point for some of their staffing issues. So I think that, that's just something to consider when you're choosing, and especially with funders. Instead of just saying, we're giving this to whoever wants it, we are targeting where it can help the most. And so I think that's a great mission, but it's hard work, and our districts are super excited to be a part of it, and very grateful for the opportunity because they can truly see the need. And when we've shown the districts the curriculum, they've been very excited about that too, because it's just so innovative, and it has the anti-bias instruction, culturally responsive teaching, education as an act of social justice, all of these things that just really appeal to the demographics of these areas of our state. So we're excited to roll this out and to continue this work.
That's awesome. And I think, one of the things that and I'll just kind of end on this, that we always try to emphasize that there's no one way of doing business, right? It requires leadership, but one of my favorite books on education is called We Make the Road by Walking. It's a conversation between Paulo Freire, who I'm sure you all know, the great liberation educator, and Miles Horton, who was the guy who actually trained a lot of the people in the civil rights movement back in as early as the 40s in Highlander schools. And they just have this running conversation. And the idea of we make the road by walking is that you just got to start, right? There's no, we have a blueprint. We have tons of resources. We want to help you, but Arkansas is going to be different than California, and California is going to be different than Connecticut. And, you get my point. And we're here to just help you figure it out as you walk down that road. So Charlie, thank you, not only for helping us out with this today and telling your story, but the work you're doing, because it makes a difference, right? And for us, it's all about impact. And when we can see the impact of what we've been doing, it just, we can feel good. So thank you for taking the time and for joining us today, and for the work you're doing. And to everybody else, I also thank you for joining us on this. I know I can just see from the chat all the awesome things that are going on out there. We're going to download all this. This is all going to be, we're going to post it. We're going to have FAQs. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, and just say, for more information, anything large or small, that's what we're here for. We serve public educators at PDK and at Educators Rising, and that's what we love to do. And anything we can do to help you get better is what we're there for. Team, who's all either on text, did I miss anything? Right? We good? We're ending a couple minutes early, which I know is good for everybody. All right. So again, follow up with us. Follow us on Twitter. Ping us, and all that. And I trust everybody will stay safe, stay healthy, keep doing what we need to do for our kids and for our community. And again, Charlie, thank you so much for your work and for working with us today.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for your help.
All right. Thanks, everybody. If anybody's on for the next webinar, we're taking a short break, and then we're